You're listening to the Lindsey Way Podcast for all things hunting with Jeff and David Lindsey. Hello, what's up? Episode 3 podcast of the Lindsey Way. We're here. I am Jeff Lindsey, and we got
David Lindsey.
We got us both here today, and today our topic is fairly simple. We don't have any special guests today, just us. Nobody wants to be on our show, but we're working on that in time, hopefully. Nah, just kidding. In all seriousness, this was probably going to be our first podcast, but after a couple of other things we wanted to cover, the title of this one is pretty cool because we get this question ever so often, but deer season is over, now what? What do we do?
Well, I always say this right here. As soon as deer season is over, we start licking our wounds. We start trying to heal up and just try to fix the stuff that we hadn't had time to do all season, or the things that we couldn't do because we didn't want to intrude on our deer or push them out of an area.
Go to the dentist, go to the doctor.
I mean, it's just like, you just think of all this stuff.
Yeah, we catch up on the stuff. We're kind of like an old buck after the rut, really. He's been going as hard as he can for a month or two, and now it's just, you sit back, spend a little time with the family, and, you can't do it all. We do duck hunting, and we do turkey hunting, but we have slowed down on those a lot over the last few years because we deer hunt so hard. And like you said, you just got to lick your wounds. This is when you got to fuel up. We kill a lot of big deer in December because, in my opinion, that is the fuel up time of the deer season. That's when they're coming to food. That's when they're moving back to their harm core, getting everything right. That's what we're doing now. With our family and friends, taking the wife out to dinner, going out to eat with those in-laws that you been putting off. Even had a couple birthday parties this week that may have hit in the wrong time of the
Man, I tell you, if you're my friend and you're getting married in October, November, or December, I won't be there. I'm sorry.
No,
So it's just kind of the way it is.
From experience, we just can't come.
And the other thing is, our world involves around deer season. So we be getting our teeth cleaned in September and getting our physicals done. So we don't have to deal with none of that stuff when we're thinking about November. I mean, that's kind of the way my schedule
right.
works.
God Family Deer is a saying we got, and we put it on a T-shirt, and it couldn't be more true because after the good Lord and our family, the next thing that gets in line is these whitetails. But we also have to start going to a lot of these trade shows, and stuff. We do the ATA. We got back from that. We're doing the SHOT Show, and these type things are kind of what's nature of the beast, part of the business. But we also have booths at the Iowa Deer Classic, the NWTF, Deer Fest. We have opportunities to go to other places, but when we started this, we didn't want to be, show dogs or roadies, whatever you want to call it.
Hat signers.
Yeah, well, we had time with our family. We value that more than anything. And if we go to these shows, it's not, and we do sell our apparel, but it's not that we really make any money on that. We're basically trying to build the brand, using that opportunity to interact with people, but we definitely don't go do it to be a hat signer, as David said, because a lot of people I know in this business get accused of that, and we've never wanted to be that, and it's never been a desire of ours. But what has been a desire of ours is to grow big deer, and that's kind of what this podcast is about. And I had a buddy one time. He was hardcore about his son's little league. And, he said championships were built in the off season. And that always kind of stuck with me because I felt the same way about big deer. Big deer are grown, are built, are raised, whatever you want to call it, in the off season. It's what we do between right now, this very instance, and the next deer season, depending on the deer that are alive still, what they're going to be, how we're going to put the odds in our favor to kill them come fall of next year.
And you can do a lot of that while you're sitting on your stand, and you're hunting a particular area. Even if you're hunting a particular deer, all the other deer that's in that area, watching how they move, where they bed, where they come from, what they're doing. I know different times of the year is totally different for deer movement, but you take all that stuff into consideration, and what Jeff and I try to do is look at spots, and when we'll look at those spots, we'll take notes if we're hunting during the season, or if you got a particular deer that you're going to hunt next year there. See what those deer are doing. Take notes. After season, there might be some things you can do to make it better.
I use the Notes app on my phone for a variety of things, but it gets used more than anything else, probably besides the mail or
too.
Instagram, because it is so important. And you taught me that as a kid in business, and I've applied it just about everything else, is if you don't write something down, you forget it. Our brains can only hold so much. We put so much in them between our daily lives, deer pictures, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, he's showing me his notes now. He's got 153 of them. But you can only have so much in there. So if you don't write it down, you don't remember it, because, 2 weeks ago, I was hunting over, it may have been more than, it was probably 2 weeks. I was hunting a spot, and I said, next year, we need to make sure we run the corn all the way up to here. And that was just 2
Create
weeks
a
ago.
funnel.
But I've already forgot that. But I wrote it down on one of these little groups, text or chat or something we got going, or on my notes. And that is the only way I can remember stuff like that, because season is so long, it's a marathon, that take notes throughout the season. If you notice a buck, he keeps moving over there, or he keeps going in the trail right down on the other side of the field, and you need to stand over there. If you don't make a note, you don't really remember that, because I'm guilty of this, until you sit in that stand the next year. It's like, I said I was going to hang a set over here, and I didn't.
Yeah, and think about, when you're sitting there and you watch the deer movement, what do you have planted in that field? Do you have standing corn in it that's forcing him to make movements different ways? You might want to go back with the same crops. You might want to change them up, move your stand location. Just so many different things that you can do.
And you have to, if you're not trying to strive to be better or make your farm better or make the land you hunt better, or even if you're hunting public land, if you're not trying to be a better hunter on that land and scouting it or whatever, I think you're going backwards. And as hunters, we owe it to the land to do everything we can, and to the deer, we owe it to, do everything we can to be a better shot, provide them more food, whatever we can do to be better at our craft or our hobby the following year.
And then that's just one thing. I mean, you had a whole list of things that we do.
Yeah, and speaking of notes, there are so many good apps out there now that, can relate to hunters but use maps. Huntera Maps is what we use on our phone. I also have Onyx Maps on my phone, map on my phone, and I make notes in there. For one, I have to keep up where all our cameras are, and I do that on the Huntera app, and we used to do that on Whitetail Freaks. Made a great app, very user-friendly, but they've since, I think it's been discontinued. But keep up with stuff like that, and if you're shed hunting and you see a spot that you think needs to be a stand, if you don't mark it on a map or you don't make some kind of note on it, I guarantee you're going to forget it come summer when it's time to hang stands, or the next fall. I mean, I'm guilty of that. Everybody else is. So make sure you got a good map on your phone. But like I say, they got these things. The sky's the limit now. The Onyx one, I really enjoy that one, and it's got a ton of things I do, not only in the hunting world, but I can locate landowners on for my business or whatever I need to do.
So what are some other things, Jeffrey, that you do that you think about? This is what you do when season's over.
Well, and this doesn't apply to me as much. I guess I do pay the bill on this, but one thing that we try to do that we have to be done before turkey season is we start cleaning our camera gear. We always get asked what kind of camera gear we run. We use Canons, we use Sonys, and our guys do a pretty good job of taking care of the camera gear, and using the air in a can air, whatever you want to call it, spraying it out, keeping them clean, keeping the lens clean. But at some point, you hunt and take it on a duck hunt, you take it to the Mississippi Delta mud, whatever. It needs to go back to Sony, it needs to go back to Canon, and it really needs to be cleaned.
So you do this after deer season or either after turkey season?
Yeah, you got to do it one or the other, and you get them pretty dirty in turkey season too. So at some point, you got to take care of your gear if you want it to perform at the best and highest level when that time comes. So we're a big proponent of taking care of our gear. I'm kind of the same way, with my bow and our guns, cleaning them. But that's kind of second nature. That's something we're going to do anyhow. But and it don't cost any money.
Yeah.
But you got to pay a little bit to send. We use FS7s, FS5s, and if you're having to send them back to Sony, it's going to cost a lot to ship them with insurance, and it's going to cost a little bit to get them to go through them, take them apart, and it's like taking your car to the dealership to get the oil changed. They're always going to find something wrong.
Yeah.
So you just have to decide, well, do I really use that feature, or do I really need that fixed? And so we're always looking at that. But that's a pretty big deal.
So the other thing you was talking about earlier, you said, we go from basically hunting until we're hunting, gutting deer one day, and then the next day we're at the ATA show.
Yeah, we said that on a previous podcast, but we're hunting, and before, we're packing our bags and we're at the ATA, and then after ATA it's like shot. Then we go to Mississippi for a week, and next thing you know, it's turkey season, and do you really feel like going out and working every afternoon or weekend when you have some spare time? And yes, I mean, we kind of do. I mean, you were moving blinds yesterday. You were in Georgia, and basically taking some old wooden stands we had.
Yep.
And that's not something that has to be done right now. It doesn't have to be done, in the summer, but anytime before deer season. It's not like they're getting used to it because, we put them up same day, kill deer out on same afternoons. That's not a huge deal, but you don't really want to make that disturbance. That's a big thing for us.
That's right. You don't want to push your deer out.
Pressure is a big thing for us. And, this time of year, just as well. I mean, we got parts of our farm that we do not go in unless it's shed season. And that'll be the one time of the year we step foot in there. And sanctuaries, whatever you want to call it. But it's more than just sanctuaries. Yeah, we have sanctuaries, but I remember growing up on our Georgia farm, we had like this little bitty 50-acre patch that it was a sanctuary, and we're like, we're not going to touch that. And now it's like, if we get off the main trail and hunt a deer stand, that's it. Besides that, we try not to penetrate anything.
We let the deer come to us. That's how we hunt the deer.
Yeah, and the older I get and the more I hunt, I find myself hunting fields more and more and more. Used to, it was timber in the mornings and fields in the evening, but now it's like, we're hunting fields in the morning just as much as we are in the evening.
Yeah. It just depends on where they're at and where the deer bed
deer is that you're hunting, but you can see so much better. You can call them. You can, manipulate them with rattling horns, etc. And you can see them to film. That's a huge deal. In the timber, it's tough, and you don't get a lot of pre-roll. And I'm big on pre-roll, so I like that. And
access is the key.
Access is key.
And a lot of times you can get in around these fields a lot easier than you can go busting through that timber on a good frosty morning, especially like late season.
Right.
You got you got ice and snow, and it crackles and crunches. There's no way you're going to slip up on no deer, or you're going to run every deer in the county out, or every deer in the timber. And
we have our Vellex mower that we use a ton all year, but when you talk about those access points, I like to do them towards the end of the summer. Because if you do it now, all that new growth is going to come back. But if you can do that July or August, when everything is pretty much grown out, what it's going to grow over the field edges, in the timber trails, whatever, that's when I like to go do the major cutting. I mean, you did some yesterday. You were just cutting a few lanes, but I think it was more of like, hey, I do it now. I'll remember to do it again in July.
Yeah, there's just so much to do on every farm. Like right now we got 10 inches of snow in Iowa. It's nothing happening in Georgia. It's a great time to go down there and spend some time and do some of the things.
In Georgia, that's about all it's doing. It's about all it does anymore. But you were down there yesterday and you were moving blinds around.
Yep.
We plan to go back to the Georgia farm today and actually put out a bunch of big time. We got all our feeders up, but it's raining. We couldn't, and I know it cut you a little short yesterday, the rain. But how many stands y'all put up yesterday?
We put up 4.
4.
Yep.
4 rednecks.
4 rednecks.
Older wood stands, in which I'm not opposed to wood stands, but I think we figured that up this morning that we got 8 years out of them, and which is not bad. But we've got rednecks that's been out about that long, and they're still brand new.
I mean, I've come to realize that no matter how good you are at building wood stands, you cannot build them as good as a redneck blind. I mean, you just cannot do it, especially up in the Midwest, just because of the snow and the rain. It's almost impossible to keep it out of the windows and
off
the floors.
A really good wood stand that can compare to a redneck, you're going to have several $100s in it, a few $100s in it actually. And if you're only getting 6 or 8 years out of it, and that's not counting how much noise they make, but that's what we grew up hunting in. You know?
And there's a lot of people do that can't afford to buy stands, and I totally understand that. You just do the best you can do and make it work, just like we always have, and
that's why
go with
ground
it.
blinds have become so popular. Most people will ask us, "Hey, I can't afford a redneck. What can I do? I got elevated ground blinds. Is there anything in between? And that's when I say the soft side blinds. We hunt out of those soft side blinds. They're more affordable, so we can afford to buy a lot more of them on our farms, and the deer get super used to them. I'm talking about the day of.
Oh, you can put them up and kill a deer out of them that afternoon.
I mean, and so we got as many of them as we have redneck blinds, and we only put a redneck in a stand, or a permanent stand, I should say, somewhere where we know is the spot we're going to hunt. And the ghillies, or the soft sides, are perfect for putting in spots where you're like, I'm going to try this spot out, and if I don't like it, moving a redneck is one thing. Now, moving a soft side, we have proven that one or two people can move that thing on a trailer, load it up, back the trailer up to it, tip it over on the trailer, move it anywhere you can get the trailer to, and have it set up, drive a couple states
45 minutes, man.
And we've never had one blow
And
over.
low impact, too. I mean, no noise, no nothing.
Low impact. And, the soft sides, they're great. They got the windows all around just like the regular redneck. So I can't stress that enough of, if you can't afford the big and the best, or any type of blind that you're looking at, those soft sides are deadly. Take you 2 or 3 hours to put one together, but when you put together as many as we have, we kind of got it down to a science, so to speak. But speaking of what we wanted to do today on our Georgia farm, putting out the big time, we started doing that last year. We put a lot of money in our food plots. That's a big deal. And some of our beans and corn, we definitely, on our Georgia farm and our Iowa farm, our Illinois and Kansas farms, we don't plant the grain. The farmers plant the grain. They harvest. We work with them, do a little horse trading, whatever you want to call it, to keep some grain, standing corn, standing beans, to carry them through the winter. But on our Georgia farms, that's what we do. That's what Georgia and Iowa provides us a little income, leasing some of this farm ground out. We farm some of ourselves. We sell some grain ourselves. But what we've started to put a lot of that money into is just feeding the deer the nutrition from now until deer season. Protein Plus, big time. We've been doing that. This will be our second year doing that. We've had other other feed programs in place over the years, but we've never been as consistent with it as we were last year. And this year we're going to do it even harder. That's our plan.
And, what that's helped us do is take some of our fields out of grain where we might have beans or corn and put it in alfalfa or clover. And that's helped us too, because that kind of keeps the cost down in those areas, and we're able to spend a little more money on the feed.
Yeah. And, there's no magic number. Some people say a feeder per 50 acres, feeder per 100. We base it off how much timber we got in that area. And, we don't probably put out enough, but we put out, pretty much what we can afford. You can, the sky's the limit on stuff like that, especially in these farms that got these high deer densities. You can just feed and feed and feed, and the deer live at the feeders, So, and we want them eating that stuff, it's got the minerals, but we also believe in a mineral program, which we've done that for as long as I can remember. I remember, back in the days, used to put out a salt block. You would go to the feed store, wherever we could find, and get a salt block and take the claw of a hammer of an east wing, chop that thing in half, and you'd have two. Now, granted, that's no minerals, but that was the start of some of these mineral holes that we have on our Georgia farm, and that, we use year-round, or the deer use year-round pretty much.
Yep.
And now, some of these mineral companies have just come so far in the advancement of the nutrition side of it, and what the deer need to stay healthy. Some are even, advertising, fight EHD. There's none that I know of fighting CWD, but there's a lot of smart people that with some great, veterinarian and backgrounds, or whatever you want to call it, that are doctors that are working on things they need to do or things people need to put in the feed and feed their deer to take it to the next level.
Yeah, just to help keep the deer herd healthy, just to keep them healthier deer. And I'm all for that. Anything to make the deer better. We spend all this money on the land and the farming and food plots and stands and everything that we do. So, if somebody's got a good idea and I think it's going to work, I'm probably going to try it.
Yeah, we're always looking for anything to make our deer healthier. That is just one of those things that, it's kind of a money pit, and you have to draw the line somewhere. But if you can only do one thing, obviously we're going to say year-round nutrition, clover plots. But a mineral program is something you can do fairly reasonable. We like to put 10, 20 pounds out every month in that same hole now until deer season. Just check your local regs. Obviously we can't put them out, in Illinois and a couple other, in Mississippi, a couple of places we hunt. You can't congregate the deer, but check your regulations, your state regulations, and that is something that you can't go wrong doing. And healthier deer, nobody can argue with healthier deer.
Yep, no, you can't argue with that. I mean, that's what we're all in this for, is to try to make our herd healthy and do the most that we can for them.
So we'll start doing all that stuff now until shed season, and we don't, it goes back to penetration and pressure on the deer. We're huge on that, but so we're not doing a lot of that right now unless it's part of going in planting some trees or something like that. But shed season is kind of the time to scout. That we scout. I would say, 50 to 75% of most of the areas we scout is done during that month we shed hunt before it greens up, and we go in some of our areas now and pick up some of our sheds as we know they fall now in February, but we try not to touch everything until the hardcore areas, till we know most of the sheds have fallen off.
That's right. I think the most that you can do during shed season while you're in there, if you're going to go in there and disturb that area, you might as well get the most out of it. And looking at trees, and like Jeff said, marking that spot on your map where you might want to be like an easy access right off a road or something where you can go in and shoot does, when you just have a lull or something's just really not happening. You can mark those areas, have them on your map, something you can go in and do later on in the spring, and just good access to different spots. That's what you want to do. That's when you want to be able to identify those areas, if at all possible.
Right, and right now we're starting to lay out some areas in Georgia where we want to get some trees planted in February, and our plan is to plant some in March if the snow's gone in Iowa. And I can't overstate the impact the trees we have planted in the last 20 years on our Georgia farm has had on that farm, from the sawtooths to the chestnuts to the persimmons. The 3 biggest deer I've ever killed in Georgia, the top 3 Pope and Young deer I've ever killed in Georgia, have all been killed over a persimmon tree.
That's
all
crazy.
3 of them.
Yeah.
And one of them was there, and the other 2 you planted 15 years ago. And the way they got some of these trees now, sawtooths can be dropping within 3 years. We haven't had a lot of luck, and not really anybody has in the Midwest with sawtooths, but we have planted some other type oaks. And this year, my plan is to get some really good apple trees in there. Mossy Oak Native Nurseries offers a variety of trees. Find out what's the best for your area. But what we're doing heavy in Iowa this year is apples and crab apples. That's just kind of the plan.
Yep, we'll see how it goes. I know we got a lot to experiment with that we're not familiar with in the Midwest as far as planting trees, but through the help with Dudley and the guys down there at Native Nurseries, I think we can kind of accomplish what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's a timing deal, and you can plant all the trees you want, but if you're not going to take care of them, and we've been guilty of that in the past, if you're not going to, water them and keep the weeds back, they're not going to have a high survival rate. So you can't plant enough that you can't control or can't take care of. It's like anything else. But whatever trees we plant, we're going to kill the grass, whether that's through a Roundup, herbicide, whatever. We're going to kill the grass, cut it down with a weed eater. And when I plant that seedling, that's 90% of what we plant as seedlings. I'm going to put mulch around it, and that mulch and a tree shelter that gets the sunlight on the tree. It's kind of like the greenhouse effect, makes it grow, and it keeps it, these pesky bucks that we got that like to come in and rub these little trees, keeps them off of it, and that mulch holds that moisture there and keeps the weed competition away. So most of your water that does get in that particular area goes to the tree roots. The only thing really growing. But that's trees. That's a big thing. That's something we're not necessarily doing right now, but we're laying it out. Because if you don't, you look up and it's April, it's May, it's too late. Yes, of course, you can still plant them there, but it's definitely not recommended.
Yeah, and last year would have been a great year to plant trees had we known it was going to rain as much as it did.
Last year was the first year in a while we haven't planted any trees.
Yeah, that's right.
we had so many, and when you got as many kind of mini orchards as we have, you
start spreading the deer out.
You start spreading the deer out. And some years you just gotta concentrate on making those orchards the best they can be. We always fertilize, but last year I remember we did go back and add to a couple of the orchards that we had where the sawtooths had died, where we didn't have the best survival rate. And that's going to happen. They're not all going to live. I mean, I always said if most of them live, you're doing a good job. Everybody has their own percentage of success rate on there. But for us, for the amount of time that we have to these certain farms, if most of them live, you can do it. And I always say that's something everybody can do. It does not cost a fortune to, you can quit eating lunch a couple of days this week and you have enough to buy a pack of the sawtooths.
Oh yeah.
A couple of persimmons. And I don't care if you're hunting Granny's Back 40, you're leasing land. I know you can't do really things on public land, but whatever access you have, work with a landowner. Most people ain't going to complain or be against you planting trees. Now, if they got cows or horses or something that can just totally destroy it, you're kind of swimming upstream. But, whatever you can do to that land, improve it, I'm all for it. But trees are a very easy way, and you get to see the benefits off that. I mean, I know a lot of the trees that I'm planting, I'm probably not going to get to hunt them. But if Jackson, my nephew, or Cash, my son, Charlotte, my daughter, can hunt them, 20, 30 years down the road, that's going to be pretty cool. And the sawtooths that you planted,
they're big enough now for the
20
kids
years
to hunt.
ago, we've been killing deer off of them for 10 years. But my plan this year is to put a stand in one of them.
Oh yeah, they're big enough. It's amazing.
Now, how cool would that be if Cash was up in a ladder stand, or Jackson, and their first deal with a bow or a crossbow was out of a sawtooth oak tree that you planted in 2000.
Yep, it could happen. I mean, they're like 35 foot tall now,
Yeah, they're huge. And we made a mistake at the time. We planted them too close. They were...
Well, we planted them 30 feet. And 30 feet's a long time for a seedling.
Recommended.
It was. And you look at them now, and the limbs were growing together on them and all. But even though I've had people look at them, they would say I still wouldn't take them down.
They're too pretty, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, if you're going to do it, take the time to do it right, research a little bit, look at some literature, look online, YouTube videos, whatever. Make sure, if you're going to put the time and money in them, do it right.
And it's hard to look for it, 20 years down the road and think, there's no way that tree's going to grow together, but they do.
Right. There's so many people, and that's the great thing about deer managing in 2019 is you have all these resources at your fingertips, whether it's on QDMA.com, MossyOak.com, GamekeepersClub.com. All of them have so much information and articles and, videos that people have done on these specific things that we're talking about, and YouTube. That's one thing, Derek, my camera guy, has probably taught me, I've learned from him more than anything else, is that when he wants to know something, he goes on YouTube or he goes on Google and he figures out how to do it.
Somebody else has done it.
And
You
somebody
might
else
well
has
learn
had those
from
problems,
that.
or if you can't figure out how to do something, somebody else has already done that for you.
Yep, that's kind of right. It's like anything you want to know that you don't know, talk
it over. Somebody somewhere has. Another key point I'd like to cover is, year-round nutrition and the best success we've had over the last couple of years. Because I'm going to be honest, I've always heard this, but we haven't really practiced it to the last 2 years. But frost seeding on clover. And what I'd like to do at some point is get Austin Delano in here with Mossy Oak Biologic. He is the guru, and explain frost. Let's have a whole podcast on frost seeding clover because it's that effective and it's that important to year-round nutrition. And most of the spots we're doing is spots that we can't get a tractor to, but it's going to come up when you hit it right when that ground is freezing and it's thawing out in the middle of the day. And most places that's only a 2 or 3 week window, sometimes less than that if Mother Nature don't cooperate. But go in there, frost seed that clover, and it's going to be up by fall. And it is you take care of it. Sometimes you got to spray it. You really need to mow it if you don't have a high deer density, just tearing it up. But mow, spray, and it's pretty affordable. Things you can do with a backpack sprayer, things you can do with a 4-wheeler sprayer, or even a tractor sprayer. For pretty low cost, you can have a year-round nutrition.
Yeah, the maintenance for clover per dollar is probably about your most economical food plot that you can have. Mm-hmm. It really is.
some of the smaller farms we got that have the best deer density on them but they just have this plethora of clover on them that, whether the guy we bought it from previously had just went in there and put clover fields everywhere and maintained them. And some climates are easier to maintain clover than others, but for all-season clover, I can't state that enough how important it is. And while it's a little too early to do it right now, next month or two, the conditions may...
Well, it varies per region.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I'm just talking about Iowa, but yes.
Austin would be, he would be a great person. His knowledge that could give you when to do it in the South and when to do it in the Midwest, if there are better dates there than others as far as frost season, for sure.
Year-round nutrition. I know kind of the one things you handle most all of the farming aspects. Grain for sure. You got your Kinsey planter, you got your Great Plains grain drill. Those are your babies. But what are you doing now to get ready? And it's January, so not a lot. But what are you doing in February or early March to get ready for grain season?
I start looking back at our crops, what we had in what fields, and try to determine between you and I if we want to keep the same crop in it. Most of the time we rotate it 90% of the time, but you always have that 10% that you might want to go back with beans in it because it did so good, or you got a particular deer in there that you want to hunt him a different way. We use all kind of things as far as blind spot, or we might plant corn to get us buffers for access to our stands, or to break fields up, or to create funnels even. I've planted corn in a triangle angle before to try to funnel a deer by a stand that I have in a particular spot. And what you said a while ago about jumping around, I hate to about these stands, but what you said earlier about soft sides and box blinds, those soft sides, you can funnel these deer to corn. You can take one of those soft sides and pop it up 30 yards away. The deer don't even know you're there. The next day you can be hunting out of it. But I try to take into consideration on the plots what we had and what we're going to go back with, so that I can start figuring out how much fertilizer I'm going to need, how much seed I'm going to need to order, and get all that lined up.
Yeah, and speaking of clover, we talked about clover a while ago, and we should have touched on this, but what and when do you like to fertilize clover with?
I like to fertilize it early spring, like around March, depending again where it's at and what the conditions. Of course, I'm not going to fertilize over snow in Iowa in March, but I would in the South because it'll green up a lot quicker in the South than it will up north. I'll fertilize it depending on the company that I can get it with. Like in the South, they don't mix it like they will up north. I'll go with a triple 17 or 13. The best thing to do, if you can, is take a soil test. It don't always work where we can. I'll just go in there and put about 300 pounds of triple 17 on it, Then I'll go back in later on in the summer and try to hit it before rain and fertilize it again, so it'll be good for the fall. I do the same thing up north. Far as overseeding it, really it just kind of depends. If it's a new plot and you plant it in the spring, and it rains, you're in good shape.
You're talking about planting clover.
Yeah. Now, if I'm planting clover, I'd probably try to plant it in the spring. A lot of people might plant it in the fall with a cover crop, but I've always had good success in the spring.
And you feel the same way about alfalfa or alfalfa clover mix.
Springtime
is when it really
jumps. A lot of people recommend it in the fall. They recommend planting that alfalfa in the fall with a cover crop, but it's worked good for me to do it in the spring.
Well, we planted our alfalfa, or my farmer planted my alfalfa in Illinois 2 years ago in the fall in August. He had like August 15th date in mind. Well, and this year we missed that. And so what we're trying to do this year, Wes is going to help me with that. He put in the deer radishes in these spots. He put them in late, but they were just going to prepare the ground, prepare the soil. And what we're going to do a spring planting. It's about 2 to 3 acres plots of straight alfalfa, Roundup Ready alfalfa, and that'll just it helps take a little pressure off of everything else. And that's kind of the reason we do it. We don't even really, our deer density will be so high there, just like it is in Iowa, we won't even really have to mow them. Now you
probably
can,
won't.
But you probably won't even have to.
Yeah, we just knock the top side of it. That's about it. I mean, the deer take care of the rest of it. Spray them as needed.
Well, another thing that a lot of people start talking about this time of year, they get antsy, they want to work on their farm, but is timber stand improvement, or TSI. A lot of people know that. We've started delving into that the last couple of years. Used to, the only TSI we really did was some tinkering around we did in the woods with our chainsaws or what our loggers were doing when they were cutting stuff. But now, this stuff is next level. I mean, one of your buddies, Skip Sly, he's taught you a lot about hinge cutting and stuff like that. And there's companies out there that will come in and consult or do it themselves. I'm talking about the next level stuff that there's no way I can understand, and it'll probably take me a long time to figure out. But you've done a pretty good, fair amount of it last year, didn't you?
Well, only what we did by hand. I didn't really hire a company to come in because I still, honestly, I don't feel 100% confident enough with hinge cutting that I'm going to go in and cut all my timber down. We got too many oak trees and too many things that we need some TSI done, and I'm going to work with the state to try to do some cost share programs to get that done. But it takes about a year to get all that stuff working. Even in the South, we raise pine trees on our farm there. It's going to take you a year. By the time you get a forester in there and figure out what areas you want to cut, you work through the wet weathers, the wet seasons, you're looking at a year down the road, possibly, before you can do anything. And you don't want to make drastic decisions when it comes to cutting your trees. I'm a big fan. I do not like to cut oak trees. I'm not saying you can't thin them, but I'm just looking at that oak tree.
It's
been growing a year.
Tree, man.
And that if I cut that oak tree out, it's going to miss a few generations.
Yeah. Well, I've always felt like that. I mean, I had people say on a certain farm, you look at it and say, man, there's some money right here in these oak trees, or you really need to thicken this up. And yes, we manage our farms mainly for deer, but I think about, a turkey mite roost there, or I like looking at that tree.
Yeah, and
that's pretty.
And there's always a lot of timber stand improvements you can do without cutting the big oaks.
And it's a balancing act.
It is.
It's a balancing act. And this is, like I said, all this is next level stuff. Obviously, you gotta have a pretty solid landowner you're working with if you're going to start cutting trees down.
Yeah,
you don't own the farm.
This is like another episode right here just to talk about the timber.
Yeah, and it won't be with just us, because I think out of every aspect of the farm, this is what I know hardly anything about. And you definitely know more than me, but I still think it's something that we could learn a lot more from
I think you could say that about everything we're talking about as far as clover and food plots. And, we know enough about this stuff to get us by and be dangerous. We're not experts in any field, except we try to be more so in hunting. There's a lot more people that can hunt probably better than us and a lot smarter. Yeah. So we know a little bit about everything, but there's so much stuff you can learn about. There's so many different ways, like you talked about YouTube and Google, that we can learn things that we don't know about that help us every day.
Yeah, and the people that, Mossy Oak Biologic, we lean on those a lot. Hey, get on their Instagram, get on their Facebook page. They respond to these messages. Or if they have a Q&A, they do those once a month, Get on that Q&A. Ask those questions that pertain to your region. These guys, this is what they do for a living, is perfect when to plant this stuff. They test it out. They got people testing. We even tested a product this year that will probably be coming out. So they got people all across the country testing it just to be able to provide you all the information they can. So lean on these people. That's what they're there for. And they love these questions, because a lot of times when you ask me questions on social media, I'll do my best to answer. But if it's something beyond my head, I'm going to these guys. Hey, Mr. Bobby. Hey, Austin. What
these
do
are the
you
experts.
Do in these situations, Because I'm just guessing. And if I'm going to give somebody my opinion, I need to be dang sure I'm standing behind it to know it's going to work.
Everything that we say here on these podcasts may not be exactly 100% right, but it's what's worked for us.
Yeah. And it may not be what works for your region.
It's kind of the Lindsey Way.
Yeah. It's what works for our farms. Yeah. But we managed farms in enough different states in the U.S. that we know what works for us in those areas. But, man, you start talking about the Northeast or Texas or Oklahoma or the upper Midwest. I mean, hey, I can't help you, bud. I can give a good guess.
I can tell you what works for us in another area.
But I do know. That's why I do always say clover, because that is one thing that you can just about plant anywhere in the country, and all your animals are going to benefit off.
And you think about it, it's like some stuff you try to get it to grow and it won't grow. Clover, it's almost like once you get it going and get it established, you can go in there and plant other stuff in there, and it seems like that clover will just come back.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
And a lot of people, kind of wrapping up here, a lot of people will take their stands down. We started hunting out of climbers in Mississippi this year, and a lot of people that I know, I won't name any names, especially in the South, are bad about leaving your stands out, your climbers out all year. So get those things in. Not that anything's going to happen to them, but pull them out of the woods. And we have so many sets in our Iowa farm, there's no way we could take them up and down. If we did, we'd have a week doing at least, doing it and putting them back in. And we're not going to do that. But what we do, not right now, sometimes we'll try our best to pull our lifelines down. That's the things that can rotten. And now what we will do before we climb a tree in August or July to hang it, we'll have a lifeline up. But what we'll do is almost put another ratchet strap on it.
Always check them.
I do not step into any stand unless it's been, and I don't care if it's this time of year, whenever, I'm going to be hooked up before I get in. Yep. I cannot stress that enough of how big a deal, lifelines are. I know, you got your hunter safety vest, and I know you're wearing your vest at all times, and that's great, but you owe it to your family, you owe it to your friends, get a lifeline, because I think 80 to 90% of accidents aren't in the stand, you falling out. That's when you're going from your ladder or your steps into your stand. So I like to be hooked up from the time I climb on that first step to the time I get back down that tree. That's a big deal for me. And I know as you get older, that's even bigger for you.
Yep, and I've had some friends over the last few years that have fell out of stands when they wasn't hooked up good or something was going on. But the truth of the matter is, you just need to take the time. If you don't have your safety vest, don't go up in that tree.
Right.
We're all guilty of it. Some people just get caught and get in a bad stand or something happens, but do that for yourself, and like Jeff said, do it for your family.
Yeah, and one of our good friends, Pastor Tim Bourne in Mississippi, he's been gone a few years now, but he wore a safety vest, but when he climbed from his steps to the tree stand, he fell and just wasn't able to recover. So sad deal. It's a bad deal, but you hear a lot of that, but thank God we're starting to hear less and less of that. I think there was 6 or 9 fatalities last year in tree stands. I think the Tree Stand Safety Awareness Company just released that. But this year we are shooting for 0, and that's the best way to do it, because there's so many squirrels, dry rot, the tree grows, so many ways that stand can come off that tree. So that's a big deal. But that's a little bit of what we'll be doing the next couple of months between now and shed season, turkey season, to get our farms ready, get them to the next level. And like I say, it doesn't matter if you got 5 acres, it doesn't matter if you got a lease, you hunting Granny's Back 40, whatever it is. Do all you can on that land in the off season to take it to the next level, because when you're sitting there next year, there's a sense of pride you'll have. When you're hunting there and you kill a deer over that clover plot, that's a big connection.
Especially if you can use the knowledge you gained the year before to help you kill that deer.
Right. Yeah, and we hunt public land, and I'm not dissing public land by no means, because that's all some people got to hunt. And we hunt public land mainly out west and duck hunt it, but there's a connection between doing something to your land and being able to benefit or reap those rewards that sometimes you just don't get to reap on public land. So of course that's the American dream of owning land, but even leases, leasing is still a way to connect. Find you a lease. Any lease that comes across the table, it may not be the right one for you, but if it's one that you got a landowner who will work with you, he'll let you clear out a couple trees to put in a food plot, who doesn't mind you doing fertilizing his honeysuckle or whatever. There's opportunity there, but whatever you do, just leave it better than you found it. That's just kind of our motto, no matter where you hunt. And it's God's renewable resource that He put us on earth to take care of it, and we got to do our best job to do it. We got to be gamekeepers.
Yep, we do.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. And if you get a chance, subscribe to our podcast. Give us a comment. Let us know what you want to see in the next episode. And if you don't mind, give us a rating, give us a like, share it with your friends. And until next time, this is Jeff and David. We'll see y'all.